I learned something the day they fired me. Silence is the most powerful weapon you can carry into a war you didn't start. And, believe me, I never wanted a war. My name is Emily Carter, and until a few months ago, I was a project compliance specialist at Greyson Dynamics, a mid-sized tech consulting firm headquartered in Austin, Texas. I was the quiet type, the kind who triple-checks every clause, reads every footnote, and makes sure every client contract is airtight. People used to joke that if there was ever an apocalypse, I'd survive because I'd have the paperwork ready. I never imagined that the same attention to detail would put a target on my back. It all began on a humid Monday morning, when I arrived early as usual. The office was still half dark, the cleaning team just leaving, and the air smelled like coffee and printer ink. I liked being the first one in. It gave me a sense of calm before the corporate storm. But that day, the calm didn't last long. At 8:12 a.m., my manager, Linda, stormed into my cubicle with her usual diet soda and her usual irritated expression. She was the type of boss who mistook aggression for leadership. Without saying good morning, she slapped a folder onto my desk. "Emily, you need to push this contract through today," she snapped. I opened the folder. It was a new vendor contract for a client named Solara Tech. I'd reviewed hundreds of contracts, but something about this one made my shoulders tighten. The pricing structure was off, clauses were missing, and worst of all, the dates seemed altered. There were erased timestamp marks, something you'd only notice if you'd spent years combing through legal documents. I looked up at her. "Linda, this isn't valid. These numbers don't match the last version. We need a review." Linda's face hardened. "No review. Approve it. Now." "I can't," I said quietly. "This would be illegal." The moment that word left my mouth, illegal, I knew I had stepped on a landmine. Her jaw tightened, and she leaned so close I could smell the artificial cherry of her lip gloss. "This contract is already signed by upper management. You're just stamping it. Don't act like a hero." She walked away, heels clicking like gunshots. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment my fate was sealed. For the next few days, things changed. People stopped talking when I walked by. Meetings I usually attended suddenly didn't include me. I felt like a ghost haunting the office I once cared about. Still, I kept doing my work the way I always had, honestly. Then came Friday. Around 3 p.m., I was called into the glass conference room. Every major manager was there, including Mr. Greyson himself, the CEO the company was named after. He was a tall man with a calm voice and a reputation for being ruthlessly efficient. I felt my hands sweat as I sat down. "Emily," he began, folding his hands on the table, "we appreciate your service to the company. However, due to restructuring, your position is being eliminated effective immediately." My heart dropped. "Restructuring? My whole team is still here." Linda smirked. She didn't even pretend to hide it. Mr. Greyson simply continued, "HR will escort you to pack your belongings. Security will deactivate your access in 30 minutes. Just like that. After years of loyalty, I was thrown out like defective furniture. I swallowed hard. Is this because I questioned the Solara Tech contract? For a moment, no one spoke. Then the CEO smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're free to think whatever you want." That was the moment I realized it wasn't incompetence. It wasn't restructuring. It was retaliation. I walked out of that room feeling small, humiliated, and painfully aware that everything I had built, my reputation, my career, had just been ripped out from under me. HR shadowed me like I was a criminal. They watched me pack my pens, my notebooks, and the little framed photo of my mom. Every step felt heavier. But while packing, something unexpected happened. When HR left the room for a moment to take a call, I noticed a stack of printed contracts on a shelf near my desk, documents I had reviewed over the past year. Something inside me pushed me to flip through them. Not to steal anything, not to harm anyone, but to understand what I had been fired for. That's when I saw it. Multiple contracts, different clients, different dates, had identical digital alteration signatures. Someone had rewritten clauses, switched payment terms, and even added vendor kickbacks. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. A system. A crime. My heart pounded. I felt like I had swallowed ice. I wasn't imagining it. The Solaritech contract was part of a much bigger scheme. They weren't just cutting corners. They were manipulating clients, inflating invoices, and creating illegal side agreements. And it was happening under the CEO's direction. That's why they fired me, because I had seen too much. I put the papers back exactly where they were. I didn't take a single thing. But I walked out of that building knowing the truth. I had been fired to protect their fraud. The Texas sun hit my face as I stepped outside. My eyes burned, partly from the brightness and partly from humiliation. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For a long time, I couldn't move. The betrayal was too heavy. After a while, I turned on my phone. Messages began pouring in from coworkers. "Are you okay? What happened? Linda's acting weird. People are saying it had to do with a contract?" I ignored all of them, because something had shifted inside me. I wasn't the type to seek revenge. I wasn't loud, or aggressive, or dramatic. But I believed in one simple truth: wrong is wrong, no matter who signs the paycheck. They thought firing me was the end. They had no idea it was the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every moment from the office. Linda's smirk, the CEO's cold smile, the stacked contracts with those identical digital signatures. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined their boardroom, everyone patting themselves on the back for eliminating a problem. They thought I'd just disappear quietly, maybe cry for a week, maybe look for another job, maybe tell myself it was just bad luck. But the truth wouldn't let me rest. Around 4 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep. I got out of bed, pulled my hair into a messy ponytail, and sat at my dining table with my laptop. I opened a blank document and stared at it for a long moment. Then I started typing everything I remembered: the contract names, client accounts, suspicious clauses, even the conversations I had with Linda. I wrote down every detail I had ever ignored or brushed off. My mind was sharp in a way it hadn't been for years. Anger has a strange way of clearing fog. By sunrise, I had compiled a 20-page timeline. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. Reporting it to the company was pointless. They weren't on it. Going public online was risky and probably wouldn't help. The police wouldn't care about corporate contracts. And confronting the CEO myself would accomplish nothing except giving them time to cover their tracks. So, I did what every nervous, newly unemployed woman does when she doesn't know what to do. I Googled corporate contract fraud reporting USA. Whistleblower lawyer Texas. Retaliation firing illegal. I clicked link after link until one name kept popping up: Harrison and Bloom, a Dallas-based law firm known for handling corporate fraud and whistleblower cases. Their clients were big companies, government agencies, even hospitals. They were expensive, intimidating, and probably too much for a single person like me. But their website said something that made my stomach flip. "If you've been punished for refusing to participate in illegal corporate activity, we want to hear your story." So, I filled out their contact form. I didn't expect anyone to respond. But at 10:42 a.m., I received an email. "Can you come in today at 2 p.m.? My heart raced. I replied, yes, before I could think. I spent the next few hours fighting nerves. I kept imagining walking into a huge fancy office, getting laughed out for being dramatic, or worse, being told I didn't have a case. But when I arrived, the building was surprisingly warm and normal, not cold and intimidating like Greyson Dynamics. I met with attorney Julia Bloom, a sharp, articulate woman in her late 40s who wore glasses with thin gold rims and had the kind of calm confidence that made you feel safe. She shook my hand firmly and guided me into her office. "Tell me everything," she said.
So I did.
I told her about the altered contracts, the confrontation, the firing, the identical signature patterns, everything. She took notes so fast I wondered how her pen didn't run out of ink. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and exhaled. "Emily," she said, "what you just described is not only illegal, it's a federal offense. And firing you for refusing to participate is retaliation. That alone is enough for a lawsuit." My throat tightened. "But I don't have the documents. HR didn't let me keep anything." She smiled a little. You don't need the documents. You have the knowledge. And if they've been doing this for as long as you think, the evidence will be there. Companies like this always leave a trail. I didn't realize how tense I had been until that moment. My shoulders dropped, and I felt like air was finally reaching my lungs again. Julia continued, We'll file a whistleblower claim. But before that, I need to know something. Do you want this to go forward? It will be long, and they'll fight hard. People don't like being exposed. I didn't hesitate. Yes. I want the truth out. She nodded. Then we'll start today. When I left the law firm, something had changed. I wasn't a frightened ex-employee anymore. I wasn't powerless. I was part of something bigger, something that could actually bring down the people who thought they were untouchable. But Greyson Dynamics wasn't stupid. They could sense trouble. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of messages. From coworkers. Emily, the office is going crazy. They're asking if you spoke to anyone. Linda's been in meetings all morning. IT is deleting old files. From an unknown number. Stop spreading lies. You're ruining careers. You don't know what you're doing. I stared at the messages, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Someone had given them my number. Someone wanted me scared. But fear wasn't enough to stop me anymore. 2 days later, Julia called. Emily, the firm has agreed to take your case officially. And we're going to need you to come in again tomorrow. We found something. When I arrived, she handed me a stack of pages printed from public financial databases. My eyes widened. These are Greyson Dynamics vendor payments, she said. We looked into the Solara Tech deal. Their vendor doesn't exist. The address leads to an empty lot. My pulse kicked up. So, they were paying a fake company? A shell company. Most likely run by someone inside the organization, she said. Probably the CEO himself or someone close to him. I felt sick. All those contracts, all those clients, all that money. Julia tapped the papers. If this is true, Emily, they've committed fraud at a scale that could involve the FBI. I swallowed hard. The room felt smaller. And there's more, she added. We subpoenaed server logs from their cloud provider. There are traces of the edits you mentioned. Someone tried to delete them yesterday. They know, I whispered. Yes. They know something is coming. Her voice softened. And that's why I need you to stay calm. You didn't do anything wrong. They did. When I left the office that day, the sun was setting, and the sky was turning shades of orange and purple. I stood in the parking lot for a long time, staring at the horizon. I had wanted justice. I hadn't realized how big the storm would become once the truth started unraveling. But there was no going back now. 3 weeks after my firing, Greyson Dynamics was no longer the confident, polished company I once knew. Rumors were spilling everywhere, vendors asking questions, clients demanding meetings, and my former coworkers whispering about late-night document shredding and back-to-back emergency calls from upper management. Their fear traveled fast, and somehow, every detail found its way back to me. Maybe it was karma. Maybe it was the universe. Or maybe people were just tired of being bullied and finally wanted someone to root for. Whatever the reason, the truth was circling them like vultures. And the storm finally broke on a Wednesday morning. I was at home, pouring myself a cup of coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was Julia. Emily, the federal auditors are in their building. My hand froze midair. Already? Yes. The subpoena went through faster than expected. They're pulling financials, server logs, and internal communications as we speak. For a moment, I just stood there, holding my mug, feeling my heartbeat echo in my chest. It was happening, really happening. My entire world had flipped in the last month, and now the company that tried to silence me was being forced to answer for everything. My coffee turned cold in my hand. Later that afternoon, I received a message from a former coworker, Asha, someone who had always been kind to me but never brave enough to stand up to Linda. They're panicking. Linda is crying. The CEO hasn't come out of his office since morning. I didn't know how to react. Sad? Vindicated? Proud? Maybe all three. For years, I tried to follow every rule, every procedure, every ethical code. I thought if I kept my head down and worked honestly, I'd be safe. But safety doesn't exist in a place built on corruption. That night, I went for a long walk around my neighborhood. The air was cool, the streetlights glowing softly, and for the first time in weeks, my mind felt peaceful. When I got home, I opened my laptop and found an email waiting for me. It was from the board of Greyson Dynamics. My chest tightened as I clicked it open. Ms. Carter, the board of Greyson Dynamics requests your presence tomorrow morning to discuss matters related to your recent departure and ongoing investigations. I stared at the screen. They wanted to meet with me. The same people who didn't bother to hear my side before firing me were now asking for a meeting. The irony would have made me laugh if it didn't choke me first. I forwarded the email to Julia, who replied instantly. I'll go with you. Don't answer anything alone. The next morning, we walked into the tall glass building, the same one I had walked out of humiliated, jobless, and fighting back tears. But this time, I wasn't the scared employee they could push around. I wasn't alone. When we entered the executive conference room, several members of the board were seated, looking more exhausted than powerful. The CEO's chair was empty. Linda wasn't there either. One of the board members, a gray-haired man with glasses, cleared his throat. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. We understand you are cooperating with federal investigators. I nodded.
Yes.
I am. He exchanged a look with another board member. We also understand that you tried to bring up concerns internally before your termination. My jaw tightened, remembering every moment they dismissed me. I did. A woman on the board leaned forward. Ms. Carter, we were unaware of many of the issues you are now connected to. It seems upper management withheld critical information from us. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Julia placed a hand on the table. My client refused to approve an illegal contract. She was fired for it. Retaliation is unlawful. Your company endangered her career, reputation, and financial stability. No one argued. They couldn't. Finally, the gray-haired man said, Mr. Greyson has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. We've also suspended Ms. Thompson. Linda. Suspended. It didn't bring me joy. It didn't make me angry either. It just felt necessary. Then came something I wasn't expecting. We want to formally apologize to you, Ms. Carter. What happened to you was unacceptable. We are prepared to offer a settlement for wrongful termination and emotional distress, pending negotiation with your legal counsel. I blinked, stunned. Not because they apologized, but because the apology felt like closure I never thought I'd get. Julia handled the rest, legal terms, documents, conditions. I sat quietly, watching the board members shift uncomfortably as more truths surfaced in that room. Things they should have known. Things they should have prevented. Before leaving, the woman on the board said, Emily, you did the right thing. If you hadn't spoken up, we might never have found out. Her words sank into me, heavy and warm. I walked out of that building with Julia at my side. Cameras were outside. News vans lined up like they were waiting for a celebrity scandal. A reporter shouted, Are you the whistleblower? But Julia shielded me, guiding me to her car. Once we were away from the chaos, I finally exhaled. It was over. Not the investigation, that would take months. Not the trials, that would come later. But the part that belonged to me. The fear, the silence, the humiliation, that ended the moment I spoke the truth. A week later, I received confirmation from the federal office. My information had been crucial. The fraud case was moving forward, and indictments were expected. The world around me felt different. I wasn't the woman who got fired anymore. I wasn't the girl who kept her head down and hoped for kindness. I had faced the storm, walked through it, and somehow made it out stronger. One evening, I sat on my balcony with a cup of warm tea, watching the sun sink behind the trees. The sky was calm, painted with soft pink and orange streaks. My life wasn't perfect. I didn't have a job yet, and my future felt uncertain. But I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time.
Pride.
Not because I hurt anyone. Not because I exposed a company. But because I stood up for what was right, even when it cost me everything. I closed my eyes, letting the warm breeze brush against my face. For the first time in months, I felt free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. And stay tuned for more thrilling revenge stories.